Hello, and welcome back to the Long Distance Love Bombs podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg, and my guest today is Rainier Wylde. It is Rainier's second time on the podcast. He has been here before, and he graciously returned to offer his presence and perspective to us, and I'm grateful for that. If you don't know Rainier, he is a writer, a teacher, and a mentor. He is a big, open-hearted, eloquent and poetic dude. And in this one, we get deep pretty quick and pretty often. Rainier talks about cheating on his wife, what that process was like, and how he repaired that dynamic. He also talks about the death of his father and how that affected him, the internal ruptures leading to new expanded perspectives about life and the universe and his place in it. And we have some rabbit holes. We tell some stories. We dive into a few things that Rainier says that he wasn't prepared to talk about. We take a couple tangents, a few stories. Mexico comes up. This is a good one. This is a really powerful, nutritious dialogue. It's a back and forth. It is informal and open-hearted. And I really am proud of this one. When we stopped recording, I was like, damn, that was good. So I think you're going to dig it, and lots to take away from this one. It was a really powerful conversation. Rainier is on Instagram. He has a website, and as he mentions at the very end, he has a second book coming out towards the end of this year. He already has one. I own it. I've read it, and he's got a couple podcasts. He's coaching individuals and groups. He does stuff with his partner, jack of many trades. And I love this conversation. So I think you're going to enjoy it also. So without further ado, here is Rainier Wylde. Before we dive into this conversation, I want to just highlight very quickly my new 3-month coaching program called Bonfire, which is starting next week. It is a 12-week program with me living in your pocket for daily coaching, questions, encouragement, and support. There's weekly sessions led by me, 8 of them. 4 of them are led by some of the wisest, most amazing experts on the planet. We've got Mark Groves, Create the Love, who is all about relationships and love. We've got Brandon Collinsworth, a mindset genius that's spoken to all kinds of top companies. We've got Kendra Adachi, all about body wisdom and the reclamation of honoring your truth. And we've got Selena Gray, who is the best money and financial abundance person I know. So, small groups, 12 weeks, maximum transformation, maximum accountability. It's going to be fire. It's going to be so good. I've included a link in the show note for that. You can learn more and sign up. That work?
Yeah, we're recording.
Man, you look great.
Oh, dude, thank you. You look great.
You were verbally assaulting me a few minutes ago because I have changed my appearance. Apparently, not to your high standard of long-haired goodness.
I felt betrayed and abandoned. And progressively your hair got shorter and shorter. And I was watching it happen on social media and I was thinking, what is he doing? And I personalized it. I was like, what is he doing to me? Like, what does this mean about me now? You know,
why is he doing this to me?
Right.
Because there's not a lot of long-haired dudes operating in the personal development space that we're in. A lot of clean-cut hombres.
Yeah, Traver, definitely our mutual friend, very clean-cut, very, very clean.
Very clean as well. Yeah, it smells great. Anyway, Rainier Wylde, welcome back to the podcast. But for those listening that have not heard the goodness of the first episode and have no idea who you are, how do you describe yourself, and can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I was in Mexico last year and I got talking to a bartender and he was asking me what I did, and I was trying out things, because I get stuck. I'm like, what do I say that I do? And so this time I tried out this descriptor. I said, I'm a short essayist. And he looks at me and I'll never forget what he says. He kind of gets quizzical and he goes, well, you don't look so short to me. And I love that. I think I'm a writer and a teacher. Those are the verbs that I inhabit. And I think the thing that drives me as a writer and a teacher is locating myself and helping others locate themselves in the totality of the human experience, especially in relationship to getting into the here and now, to being fully and deeply alive in relationship to themselves and to others and to the world around them. And it seems like everything I do kind of is connected in somewhere in that web. So whether I'm writing short essays or the book I released a couple of years back, or the upcoming one, or doing workshops, whatever that is, it seems to all kind of inhabit that space
of facilitating the present moment for people.
Yeah. Yeah, getting people into that sense, not just into the present moment. I think sometimes we talk about living in the present. And to be honest, we all live in the present. I mean, there's not another place we live, but it really is that sense of being fully and deeply alive. So if the present moment is kind of like that shimmering event horizon, almost like this invisible tear in the space-time fabric that's right ahead of us. Most of us live like 3 feet behind it or 3 feet ahead of it, like past or future. But it really is like that creative act of having your face shoved up against that shimmering event horizon, and you're in it, right? You're really in it. You're on the edge of your seat, so to speak. And I think that's the experience I try to facilitate in people, whether it's on Instagram and, in 2,200 characters of writing, or in like the workshops I lead or one-on-one. That's always the goal. Get people into that sense of aliveness.
How do you define aliveness?
Yeah. It's interesting. I was working with a tennis pro once, and like real high level. Like, God, he's like the highest level like athlete I think I've ever worked with. He was like number 5 in the nation. And he started to tell me that when he's on his game, when he's playing at that high level, he's not really there. And it's really interesting. Like, I think like a lot of athletes in particular would say, like, when I'm really like in it, when I'm not, it's almost like I'm not there. I'm in flow, for instance, you might say. And it's humorous. Like, the next question is, well, so when does that change? Well, when something goes wrong. So what happens when something goes wrong? Well, our assessing mind comes online and we start to go, what the fuck happened and who's to blame? Yeah. And a lot of us live in that space. Like, what the hell is going on? What's wrong? And who's to blame? And usually it's like us first. And so we're very, very self-critical. And then we can't hold that for so long. So then we're very others critical. So that's where most of us live. So to be fully alive is really to inhabit that space where it's like you're there, but you're not there. You're in it. Yeah. And I can think, some of my first experiences in that, and a lot of them had to do with creativity. A lot of them had to do with, whether I was like writing a song or painting or writing poetry or performing and like emoting, whatever that was. Like, I noticed there was this quality of like everything disappeared, and yet at the same time, everything was vivid technicolor. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're all in pursuit of those experiences, whether it's in the bedroom or the boardroom or painting or for me, it's at my laptop of when I can drop in so deeply and presently. And then I check the time and it's like, wait, it's been 40 minutes. I have a call right now. Like, how did that happen? Where was I? Yeah. Right. And so this kind of juxtaposition to being fully present in some way means that you're not aware that you're fully present, but that you're not quite there in the experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Which is so interesting because we talk about mindfulness so much. And of course, mindfulness is this phenomenal tool. And I think actually, like, loosely translated, it kind of also means like a little mindlessness at the same time. Like, there is that quality of being there, but not there. And that really is it. I think anthropologically a lot, And so one of the things I often consider is like pre-verbal humans. So if human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, have been around for like, 350,000 years, we start verbalizing around 70,000 years ago. That means that roughly like 280,000 years of our experience was pre-verbal cognition. And what were we doing before we were signifying with words? Well, I think scientists, anthropologists would often tell us like people were actually living. That's what we were doing. It's like we were a part of the nature, so to speak. And, we weren't necessarily describing it. We weren't necessarily signifying it with these symbols we call written word. We were in it. And today, I think the best we can do is to try to remind ourselves of being in it. So I think a lot of world religions, kind of point to those moments, which are simply quintessential to being human. So like Zazen, mindful sitting. Okay, like let's go to a hunter-gatherer tribe and see them sitting around a campfire. Do they call that like mindful sitting? No, that's just being a human. Or like I even think of Christianity, like Western civilization's homegrown wisdom tradition. It's like, what is the one central act of that religion? We would have to say it's like communion, and Jesus says, take this bread, take this drink, and do it in remembrance of me. Like mindful eating is at the heart of Christianity. And it's like, well, okay, let's go back to that hunter-gatherer tribe. Did someone have to come along and be like, okay, I really want you to focus on the venison that you're tasting right now. I want you to taste. No. They were there with it. They were in it. And that's why I think so much of our, whether it's health and wellness or therapeuticism or religion, is really like the echo of a memory. It's trying to get us back to our original sense of being human.
I love that so much, man. Just picture these personal development gurus on Instagram being dropped into a hunter-gatherer tribe 10,000 years ago, whatever. Like, no, really be here now with me. Like, no, that's all we do. Like, we're always just here. And we've kind of had to brand our dysfunctional, unhealthy version of living in a way that induces us to get back to what once was. It's clusterfuck.
Yeah, we'd have to, our health and wellness guru, if he was to travel back 200,000 years and sit around that, he would first say, well, I want you to be here now. And then they would look at him very quizzically, assuming they understood what he was saying, but they would genuinely be mystified. So then he would be struck with a real quandary, how to sell my product. So then he would have to invent a problem. He would have to actually say, well, there's something that's not going right here, right, guys? Like you're missing out on something. There's something called, it's interesting. I was reading a biography of Hernan Cortez and the conquest of what became Mexico. And it was real interesting. He decided to utilize the priesthood and utilize the Catholic Christian faith to conquer these tribes. And he realized very quickly that they weren't buying it. So he would actually like kind of explain it. He would say, well, hey guys, if you join up with me, then you'll get to go to heaven. And they're like, well, what's heaven? And he was like, oh, okay, you don't actually believe in that. Okay, so there's this great afterlife that you would get to go to. And they're like, well, but we like our life. Like we're actually not, like, we don't need that. And he goes, okay, well, if you didn't go to heaven, then you would go to hell, actually. And that's where you really don't. So one of the chiefs who was tortured by the Spaniards and Cortez's men, was a priest came up to him and said, well, do you want to say your last rites so that you can go to heaven? And the chief looks at him and says, well, will the Spaniards be there? And he says, well, of course, I can absolutely assure you that we will all be there because we are all good, God-fearing Catholics. And the chief spits on him and says, then I would rather burn in hell for 1,000,000 years. And I think like the reality is that the health and wellness tradition, the therapeutic tradition, the religious tradition have needed to invent a problem, whether in this life or the afterlife, to sell the solution, right? Because being human isn't good enough if I need to get paid.
Mm. Oh man, there's so many rabbit holes we could dive down right now.
Sorry, I just did that.
No, yeah. I was like, oh, he's going there. I mean, where do you feel like taking this? I know originally we had discussed way back when talking about love, relationships, the seasonality of love and relationships. But are you feeling called and impassioned to continue this kind of discourse? Like what feels good for you, man?
First of all,
I'd rather the guest like be enthusiastic about the conversation rather than churning out the dozen talking points that they've pre-prepared or espouse on various platforms, you know? Not that you would do that, but
first of all, I just want to say thank you. I have not actually talked about these things, I don't think publicly. So I clearly feel very comfortable with you that I just like let that stream loose. Second of all, I'm on this great like liver detox and like I'm feeling a lot of energy right now. And I'm not exactly sure if that's what just came through. Cause again, I don't tend to go on rabbit trails about Hernan Cortez often. So thank you for the unique experience of that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, cool. We're going to talk about torturing indigenous people. Like, that's interesting. I didn't have that on my Rainier Wylde podcast bingo card, but what's the liver detox out of curiosity?
Oh, so I went to Crete last summer. This is a cool story. And so maybe I'll just share this by way of getting us back onto our talking point topics. But
wherever you want to take this is realistically just fine with me.
So last January, it's just good to be with friends, like it's just good to be with friends, basically, bottom line. Last January, I was in Oaxaca with my wife, my partner, Christy, and it's like the one nude beach in Mexico. And it's this really cool place. God, it's like this little fishing village. And I'm not going to name it, but if you look up one nude beach in Mexico, this is what's going to come up. It is a real cool place. And so we're out there and she's like a mermaid out in the sea and I'm at the bar, not nude, I might add, drinking what was it? I was drinking something real good. And I'm having it and I am doing some really high class writing. And it's like that 40 minutes in and you're like, holy crap. Yeah. And so like, that's the kind of writing. And then I realize what's happening. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is solid Hemingway gold right here. And so then she comes up to me and she's looking beautiful. She's glistening. And I look at her and I say, Christy, baby, what I really need in life to write the next book is I need like a month in the Mediterranean, just like right on the sea so I can write. And she's like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Yes, you do. Yeah. So then we go to bed that night. And the next morning, I wake up to a DM. That's a direct message for those of you who aren't on Instagram, but a DM on Instagram. And it says, hey, you don't know me, but I've been following you for a while. And I own a hotel in Crete. And I would love you to come and stay as my guest. I would love to be your patron for a month and have you do whatever you want. But if you wanted to use this as a writing opportunity, I think it would be amazing. Okay. And I got to be honest, as soon as that happens, I was so weirded out. I actually thought Instagram was fucking with me. I was like, what is happening? Like, what is actually? So then I arrange a meeting, like a Zoom meeting so I can make sure this isn't a bot. And Christy's like, hey, like, can you just like maybe run the due diligence on this person? And like, is she going to be there for the month? Like what's happening here? So like it's legit. And so, I even like zoom in on the location just to make sure it's like on the up and up. So anyway, short and long of it is I go to Crete for a solid month and I'm able to do some writing there. And for that solid month of just like drinking in the sun and being alive, I got the opportunity to really sit with my thoughts and to really inhabit those places. And it was one of the most exciting moments I think I've been in for a long time. And one of the reasons is because I purely let myself fritter. I let myself just like go. So much of my life since I think I've been about 6 years old has been like achieving to prove my father wrong. Because one day he walks into my room one Sunday morning and I'm not out of bed yet. And he says, "What are you doing? You're so lazy. You're just frittering there." And so I want to prove him wrong like my whole life. So I just start racking up the achievements in life, going real hard and real strong. About a week into Crete, I realized that like I will feel a sense of accomplishment in the day if I get up, if I go for a walk on the beach, if I come back, if I drink a cappuccino, if I have a Negroni. Anyway, to your question, why the liver detox? Because I lived like a king in Crete. Oh my God. I did not withhold myself from a single delicious thing. Now, if you get the chance to go to Crete in the summer, this is what you should know. They close pretty much their kind of hospitality industry for the winter, largely. So a lot of people who are on the island live for those 3 months. So when you get there in the summer, one of the things you're going to experience is like people who have been waiting a whole year in some ways so that you can be their guest. You know, it's like that scene in like Beauty and the Beast, like, be our guest. I mean, it really is. And the level of hospitality that I received was extraordinary. And I would have like 4 Negronis, you know, and like a 4-hour sitting and like all the delicious foods. Anyway, I came back like stuffed like a sausage. And so I have this is horrible. I'm totally like being very honest with everyone. Like I've got this thing called gout and I've had it since I was like 22. And it used to be called like the king's disease, the royal disease. And like what it amounts to is the worst pain you've ever been in. And like you get it in like a joint, and I get it in my foot. And like it makes me feel like I broke my foot. And I used to feel real ashamed of it until a doctor told me, "Hey man, like anything that like the pain is so bad that you actually think that you broke your foot probably is something worth worrying about." So one of the things I discovered was that the way that I had been imbibing the world like needed a little restraint. And so my delighted, like effulgent, effervescent, joy-filled way, you know, of being alive, my joisson, was like so big that I needed some moderation. And so across the last year, I've been regaining that point. And one of the things I realized was like, hey, I should probably give like my liver a break. So between like alcohol and sugars and some of the really like starchy carbohydrates that I had not restrained myself from since Crete, I'm taking a break. And I've got to be honest, it feels so freaking good. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you're quite alive and energized in this moment, at least.
Yeah. I've been saving up for this, really.
Like those innkeepers in Crete, like, I've had 9 months to prepare for this interview, man. I'm going full hospitality on you in your podcast.
Totally. Oh, no. So, I mean, honestly, that detox was just really, really wonderful. And, you know, I think it is an interesting thing when we think about like the seasonality of life, and how we go through times of excess and then we go through times of restraint. And I think that the divine and is something that people often miss out on, like this and that. And I think we just want like an endless party. And I'd come on here. One of the things you and I talked about was talking about romance. And I think one of the reasons why I often think about romance, I think about relationships, is because that really is such a teacher. We see ourselves, and those are opportunities to bring us into the present moment. I mean, honest to God, most of us would probably say the largest experiences of being in the present are sometimes housed within relationship. I mean, think about those moments of extraordinary tragedy in relationships where you get the phone call, like, hey, there's been an accident, or you're standing in front of your lover and they say, we need to talk. And what happens? It's like the world disappears in those moments, and you are suddenly in that event horizon. It's like, we don't like thinking about those things as flow states, but we really are, right? We are constricted to that moment. And so I think I'm fascinated with relationships and romance, but we often approach those kinds of relationships in the same seasonless idea that some of us approach life, right? That like, this never ends. The good time never ends. And the moment we imagine it does, we think something's wrong, right? And so even as I'm kind of learning about the seasonality of my own body, right? And there's these wonderful times of moderation, times of restraint, times of giving yourself to the fray, both being true, both being important. I think that's true in love and in relationships. And I'm fascinated by that. There's such an organic experience, like, because relationships themselves are alive. And I think that's like the way I think of it. Like, relationships are living things. And because they're alive, they have lifespans, right? And they have seasons.
They have needs. They need to be fed. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. They get hungry.
You can't just starve those things or not pay attention to what is happening to those things. And one thing that's been interesting in this idea of seasonality is like a woman goes through different seasons month by month, right? And I've learned a lot about female cycles with my current partner, and there's times of edit that, of heightened emotionality, of heightened desire to burn the apartment down and be alone, and need for rest. And I think at a smaller scale, that mirrors the overall biological seasons of rest in the winter, hibernate, bunker down, put on some sweatpants, watch some movies. And then summer is the opposite. Get outside, get that sunshine in, energy, productivity, etc. And so I think it happens to us internally. And I think, to your point, it does happen in partnership. And one thing I've talked to Kendra about is like this idea of ebbing and flowing, of drifting together and drifting apart. And then just the other day, we were having a day or two of feeling separate and not hyper connected. And then we resolved it. And I was like, oh, like we came together again. Like, we need to recognize that we did that. We came back together again. And that is now this little micro season. Any of that makes sense?
Boy, it really does. And I think, we start to expand that. And I think like what you're really talking about, at least in my mind, is this idea that perpetuity, that permanence is really very unrealistic. Everything is in flux. Everything is in change. As you say, whether the female body or whether, a relationship, everything is changing. But we get so addicted, I think, especially relationally, to the idea that this is it. This is how it's going to be. And so I often like wonder, what if we stopped making the metric for success permanence? What if permanence or durability wasn't actually how we measured the quality of a connection or a love affair? I sometimes think about like the ancient myths, the ancient stories, particularly ones that I never really grew up learning, so I've kind of had to learn in my adult life, which are the Northern Germanic stories, the Norse Viking stories. So interesting to me, the heroes from there, like Beowulf, right? And Beowulf is an interesting example of a hero. He knows he's going to go into the battle and die. He actually knows that his death is waiting for him. And so the question is not how can I avoid death? The question is how can I live life so fully and meet my death well? I think that right there holds the lesson that is so vital for so many of us. How can I meet my ending well? So if I apply that same concept to relationships, how can I look at my relationship and accept that we lose everything? We lose lovers, we lose friends, things we thought we could never live without. It will all disappear in time. And it is not, in fact, if I did or did not lose it, but rather how I delighted in it, how I enjoyed it, how I fully surrendered to it in the present moment while it was there.
Yeah, it's so annoying that the only outcomes for a deep and loving relationship are death, grief, and heartache. Like I wrote a post about this the other day that some people really didn't savor, but like, that's it. Like best case scenario, you get heartbroken. Like worst case, one of you dies, right? And that's less than ideal. And so I think there is something profound and significant about that as being the outcome. It's like you want to experience love, you want to experience relational connectedness. Like the price of admission is risk. And you are going to need to put those cards on the table if you want to get some kind of jackpot out of it. It's really frustrating to me.
It's so frustrating to me. And I love that you kind of just admitted that. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, to me, they'll say, oh, well, this impermanence thing, that's just kind of your thing. I'm like, well, no, it's not. Like I'm a kid who moved all the time in life, like every 3 years to a new state, every year a new school, a new house. I became profoundly attuned to the idea of keeping something, of hanging on to it at all costs. Whether that was like a chintzy collection of baseball cards or relationships with people I could no longer see, but would call every day in another state to remind me that someone cared. I became profoundly addicted to the idea of permanence. And so impermanence has been a real liberation for me. It's been this understanding, this invitation to step into reality as it is, not as I idealize it, not as I wish it were. I think sometimes like we should think of love a little bit more like ice cream, like no one would look at ice cream and be like, not going to eat that. That's going to melt, my friend. You need to stay away from it because or you're going to eat it all and then it's going to be gone. How about then, sucker? Like we would never say that. Instead, actually part of the fun of ice cream is like racing the melting. Like it's ending. This is ending. How can I enjoy it so fully, be so engaged with it, be so immersed in it that actually I meet its ending, right? I think that's relationships right there.
Most definitely. And then at the beginning, you're not even thinking about the ending. You're just like loving each bite. As you get towards perhaps past halfway, I'm speaking from my own experience, then I'm starting to ration. I'm like, ooh, do I have 4 bites left or do I have 8 small bites left? Like, I want to really savor every drop of this thing. And then I'm like going around the bottom, I'm licking the bowl. It's like, no, damn. I look back to those first few bites where I'm walking around, not paying attention, not fully present, not really tasting it. And I'm like, dang, I probably should have done a bit more of that now that it's gone.
Yeah. This is a stage in relationships that I kind of know as collusion. It's like in relationship, we're colluding with one another that this is never going to end, this is going to go well for both of us, that you're exactly who you say you are, that I'm exactly who I say I am, that neither of us are pretending or putting on masks. And so we're really colluding with one another to hold up this idea of impermanence. And really that stage can last sometimes for 20 plus years if you're very good at colluding, very good at the gift of illusions that we give each other in those first stages of romance. But I think that is the idea, that we do everything we can to kind of ration or avoid the ending. We want to make sure that it doesn't happen. I was with a couple who had been married for 35 years, and he mused out loud, and I won't use her name, but Gladys, I'm going to die. I'm going to die someday. It was this really pessimistic thought, but I think he was saying it tongue in cheek. And she looked at him and totally sincerely said, "Oh, don't say that. No, you're not." And I chuckle. I said, "Oh no, he is actually going to die. But don't say that. Don't spoil it. It's a surprise ending."
Yeah. You remind me of a thing that my grandfather used to say when he was talking about his own marriage and the longevity of it. And he would say something like, "Yeah, I've been married 45 years. Some murderers get shorter sentences than that." And then inevitably my grandmother would smack him on the shoulder and he had a little twinkle in his eye. And, yeah. Are you familiar with Stephen Jenkinson's work? This is an aside.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
he
Grief.
he wrote a wonderful book called Die Wise, and talked about, I had him on the podcast a couple of times, and he talked about the idea that your death is your last act of parenting, because when your child is on their deathbed, they're going to remember the example that you set. Wow. I was just like, whew, that gives me goosebumps, man. So back to what you're saying, though, as we briefly dive into the depths of that, but this idea that sort of the honeymoon phase at the beginning is kind of like a collaborative caper that you're like running together of, let's just enjoy the sweet spots, the first bites of this ice cream sundae, and it hasn't really gotten real just yet. But then the relationship season evolves and deepens and expands, and then you're on to another kind of quest together. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
It is. And if it's okay, I'd like to go back to that Stephen Jenkins statement you just made. My father passed away a couple of months ago. And I've never experienced the death of my dad. That was a first for me. And it was such a humbling experience to be in the presence of death. Now, I've been in the presence of other people's passings before, but of course, someone so intimate, so known to you in some ways, like knowing him, like I know my own hand, and the things that you thought were going to happen didn't. Right? There were no last words. His voice betrayed him at the end, which was so unfortunate in so many ways because he's this gifted orator, right? And one of the things my mother tearfully mused was he didn't get to say his last words. And I remember that song by Deep Blue Something called Breakfast at Tiffany's. Maybe people remember that song. I loved that as a kid. One line always stood out to me. He said, "I hate when things are over because so much is left undone or unsaid." And I think that's one of the realities of endings, whether it's the life of a loved one or your own life or the life of a relationship. It's the untied element, right? There's nothing like closure, nothing like what you think of. Whatever you thought of as the ending isn't going to happen. Yeah, and I think that also kind of hints at this kind of impermanence that we're talking about here. And it's important to, I think, acknowledge, first of all, just that is just my lived experience of it. But second of all, I think that, where do relationships start? Well, you said, like that wonderful collusion state. I love that. You kind of reference that, like we're like doing a caper, and I think I read sometime that love is a mystery in search of a crime. Oh gosh, I love that. And I think that's true, but I think love starts before that. I think relationship is born before that. And this is where our mind starts to short circuit, because I think love or relationships, whatever the current relationship you're in, is actually made out of the debris of other loves. We do not like to think that relationships begin before the beginning, but they do. They begin with endings. Right. And there's a beautiful fidelity of betrayal. There's a beautiful faithfulness to the fact that all of our relationships begin with betraying something else before. I don't necessarily mean infidelity or actual betrayal, but like, for instance, I will leave my parents' home and I will go and I will discover this person who is my partner. I will leave this person and all the promises that we made together and the life that we built. And I will go and I will imagine that with someone else. All those love songs that we had like 10 years ago, well, now they belong to somebody new, right? Love is built on endings, inevitably. So I think that's actually where it starts. And I think that it's where it starts and it's where it ends. And could it be any more beautiful, any more tragic? Yeah. But it's important to highlight.
Yeah. And going back to more of Stephen Jenkinson's work, I remember he talked about or wrote about this idea that soil is just everything that didn't last. It's just everything that's died is literally what the earth is. It's what soil is. And from that comes everything that is alive, that is growing, that gets nutrients and substrate from what didn't last. And it seems to be this frustrating biological principle that the endings are the beginnings result in endings, and that's the cycle of life, whether that's individually, collectively, or relationally. There is no getting around that. We deny that reality at our own peril, I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, and that denial kind of creeps into the process of, so I'll become something new. I'll become something new, maybe something that I wasn't before, right? And so this is when our masks start to come out, right? And of course, we don't think of it as masks. I mean, sometimes we actually just think of it as self-improvement. We're like, God, I was a real lazy asshole in the last relationship. And so now like I'm Mr. Work Hard, you know, and like, I'm going to show up, baby. And I'm going to, or maybe I lied a lot in the past relationship, and now I'm going to be super authentic. Boy, there's nothing more inauthentic than authenticity sometimes, right? I mean, that really is the truth. It's like, I'm gonna cut away anything that isn't like authentic, or I'm gonna make sure that I'm always this way. So right there, we're seeing the illusions already created, right?
Yeah, I remember writing something about like, no, you're not authentic. You're an asshole. Like, you're not being honest. You're just being a triggered asshole. Like there's a gigantic difference. And I think we wear this badge of authenticity, especially in the personal development space that we play in, and especially online nowadays, as it's this ultimate reward or treasure to seek at all costs. And I don't know, man. What are your thoughts on that word?
Yeah, well, I mean, I also kind of see it as a trap. People who try to live there, I think, get stuck there. I would also say that my practice, my deep work for myself, particularly in relationship, particularly in romance, is learning to be true. Learning to be true. And for me, that starts, first of all, with radical acceptance of my whole self. So, you know, like one of the parts of radical acceptance is like, I want to lie right now. Right? I mean, like that is a way of stepping into radical acceptance. Like that's a part of me. Or, you know, for instance, I might be sitting in a room full of people, and I might say, I really want you to like me. And so I'm going to tailor my words right now to make sure that you're thinking well of me. Now, what is that? Well, that's actually just the truth. Like, that is reality. So for me, authenticity can be a trap, especially in relationship. It's part of the practice. I want to be radically authentic with myself, which means a deep democracy. It's like listening to all the parts of who I am. That I think is the most important takeaway there. But yeah, I mean, honestly, authenticity can just be a code for asshole.
And how do you distinguish between authenticity and living true, as you just suggested?
Yeah, I don't know if I do. I just watch out for the pitfalls of not necessarily stepping forward in that caring way. I think, if I could look at my own relationship, one of the things that creates the context for that authenticity, like why would I ever show up in a true way? Why would I ever not only radically accept myself, but then describe my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences to my partner? It's actually because we are profoundly committed to one another. We are committed to connection. We're committed to turning towards one another and clearing up anything that gets in the way of those things. So I think that commitment actually is the necessary nest by which authenticity occurs. Listen, I'm going to be really candid here. I don't think everyone deserves your authenticity. Like, I don't actually think everyone deserves your honest truth. I think you get to disclose to who you desire. And this authenticity world sometimes is just like going around, screaming from a megaphone.
I love this train of dialogue. Can you give an example of when people do or do not deserve your authenticity? Or an example from your own life where that has occurred and you've pulled back or gone forward?
No, because then I'd be telling you my shit. No, I'm thinking of a situation that happened quite a few years ago now, that I've talked about publicly. My partner Christy and I, we even had a podcast where we detailed our story, and this part of our story called Love Like Hell. And it was a time when I confessed infidelity to her, and the deep hurt and the pain that was created from that, and then the road to repair that we walked as a part of that lasted for years. One of the early seasons of that was determining and deciding who gets your truth. And we were trying to figure out like who our allies were in life. And for me, as for many people who are the people who are like in the people who did the wounding, we tend to like be very open with like everybody. That's a real common experience. Like the guy who really hurt her, he's like now like desperate for help. So he's like going to pastors and therapists and men's groups. And that was me. I mean, honestly, it was like, I'm just going to seek out anything and everything. And I'm going to tell my story to anyone who will hear. Part of it is because it produces like this, oh, you're a good guy because you're seeking help. It feels good actually to be acknowledged. I wasn't aware of that, but that's what was happening.
And almost in some sense, that authenticity is a balm for your own shame, right? Like, oh, you're so authentic and expressive.
It totally was. And I didn't know that. And by the way, I do think this happens in the early stages of just relationships. I'm thinking of how many relationships start off with that, like that like authentic conversation where he or she looks at the other, and maybe she looks at him and she goes, well, I want you to know, Bobby, I want you to know that I cheated on the last 7 guys and I feel like shit about it. God, I didn't want to, but they really forced my hand. And then here I was in that. And I feel like such a cheater. It's horrible. And I'm so, God, I would never want to do that to another human being. And he looks at her and with all sincerity goes, oh my God, thank you so much for being honest. She could have said she was a serial killer in that moment, and he would have been like, oh my God, she's so authentic. I love her. I mean, it's so common. Like, yeah, as you say, like authenticity kind of becomes like a balm by which we soothe our own soul. And that was certainly part of it. But Christy, my partner, she really struggled who to talk to. There was so much shame for her around what had happened, and the sense of like, oh my God, how did I find myself here? That she didn't know who to go to. And she's very open about this on our podcast. And one of the things, she went to a family member thinking that would be a safe place. And that experience was so profoundly triggering for that family member that they couldn't emotionally hold that. And they then like called in all kinds of additional resources and helps by telling a lot of different people about it. Like anyone who would listen, like they're talking about you, because like they were so upset by it. And Christy then actually confronts this person very kindly. And anyone who's, met my partner, like knows she's like genuinely one of like the most like tender human beings. And so she's very tender with the person. The other person was like so incensed. They didn't talk to her for the next year. I mean, like they were like, how dare you confront me on this? And so one of the big lessons that Christy kind of shares on, and I think this is really helpful to get to the point you were making, is like, well, you have to know that the person who's sitting across from you can actually elegantly hold their emotions, that they can actually contain and hold their own experience without projecting onto you and making their experience yours. That's the kind of person who deserves your truth, a person who can sit with and regulate their own experience. And I think we feel these people pretty quick, actually. I think pretty quickly who can regulate or attune their own emotions, their own nervous system.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this comment that I've heard many times, which is something to the effect of, I can't believe I'm sharing this with you, or I can't believe I just said that, or that people just start crying and feel safe in your presence, your energy, right? And so, but for Christy in that experience, the betrayal is an act in the present moment within the relationship. But to your point earlier, it's also a direct assault on the shared vision, the future, the dreams, all of that, right? Suddenly that seems so stable and solid gets then called into question. It's like an earthquake for all of that to resettle and reshuffle, and some things fall down. It's very discombobulating, in my experience.
Yeah. And, I've cheated. I've also been cheated on, and I get that experience. It's incredibly disorienting. You begin to ask, what did I ever really know? Right. And it's like the earthquake in the present shakes the ground of the past. And I think that happens, and you're left with a very small amount of common ground at all. I think one of the real tricks there, and we talk a lot about this with couples who we mentor or others, is can I remember rightly? Like, actually, this person probably wasn't always an asshole, right? Things happened. And oftentimes multiple truths can be real at the same time, like this person can in fact be enjoying me. Like that actually was true, and they can still be betraying me. I remember a song I wrote in my mid-20s to a lover, and I remember the closing lines of it were, I still believe in you. And I sang that line over and over. I still believe in you. I still believe in you. I'll still be leaving you. I'll still be leaving you. I still believe in you. And it's like both things are true at the same time. Yeah. But to your point, and I think this is where like the seasonality of love goes, whether it's something like infidelity and a betrayal, which is a major earthquake that makes you question so many things, or whether it's something else, the idea of that progression moving from, the ending allows me to form this new beginning. And so I step into what I would call union, right? Where we're merging. The desire is to merge with someone else. We give each other the gift of illusions, and then we collude with one another to preserve the mask, to preserve the illusions. And then what happens? Disillusionment, where the illusions melt. They fall away, they deteriorate. You see the person you're in relationship with. Oh my God, they don't do the dishes. I thought they were the kind of person who did the dishes. And now I can see, I look and I go, they are not a dishwasher. This is not okay. To use the most banal reality ever.
No, I've got it. I think I've got another banal reality that trumps that. I was, not that this is a healthy competition of sorts, but I remember I was in a group chat with a couple buddies, and one guy had started dating a woman, and it was getting somewhat serious. And one of my friends chimed in with a text that simply asked, "Have you heard her poop yet?" As if like that was a level or metric of relationship maturity that like has either been obtained or not. And it's like, oh, if you've heard her poop yet, you're getting somewhere. It's getting serious, you know?
Well, okay. So this is such an interesting thing. I have a friend who recently got divorced, and one day I got a message from him, and he's telling a story. And honest to God, this is kind of like one of those messages on voice memos that you keep, and then like you send into like a talk show like Ellen or someone else, like, because it's so funny, because he's cracking up, he's laughing hysterically as he's telling it. And the story he tells is meeting this beautiful girl and really like kind of falling for her and like wanting to impress her. And she spends the night and she's getting ready, and she's getting ready the next morning in the bathroom. And he only has one bathroom in his new apartment. And so he's really got to poo. And so he can't wait, can't hold it. So he goes and he poops in the kitchen, in the garbage can in the kitchen, away from her. And then like he realizes I'm not going to tell the story, but it is so funny. And the terror of like doing it in front of her creates this ridiculous, absolutely ludicrous mess of just hysterics. I think that's the reality, right? Like we like didn't really know. We put on that mask. We put on our best efforts. We put our best foot forward. We didn't poop in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that idealized version of himself is in that moment more of a priority than simply knocking on the door and saying, "I'm sorry, can I use the bathroom for 5 minutes? Like, yeah, I need to poop."
Yeah, exactly. We prioritize keeping the connection over being our full self in that moment and having our reality.
So it's not about the poop. It's about what the poop represents.
It's about what the poop represents. Right. And so in those moments when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, you like wordsmith. In those moments, that is the moment of disillusionment. And I really think, depending on how long you colluded, how long you kept up pretenses, those moments can be so disorienting, or the pain from it. Like, again, if we're talking about a betrayal or an infidelity, it can be so alarming, so triggering that you actually can't come out of that tailspin. And of course, like the plain and simple reality is, I liked the person you sold me on that you were. That's actually what I like. I fell in love with the mask. I fell in love with the illusion. You sold me that bill of goods. And you know what? I bought it because I wanted it. And I sold you a bill of goods too. I remember years ago working with a couple, and they came to me, and she was heartbroken. She was devastated. He had cheated on her. He had cheated on her with her best friend. Horrible, like just an unimaginable reality. Of course she was hurt. Of course she was wounded. And then some facts started to come out. Like the friend called and was like, I did this because I wanted so-and-so, the female in the relationship, to be free. So I actually seduced the husband to try to free. And so that felt weird. And like, I don't even know how to process that, and they don't know how to process that. They're like very weirded out by this kind of like psychotic behavior on the other side, and it's like we're all like confused and she's still betrayed. And then the wife leaves. She's like, hey, I got to separate. I got to go. And so naturally she does. And then like several months go by. And then she moves back and comes to this session and very tearfully says, I got to be honest. I've been having an affair for the last several years. Right. So all of a sudden things start to make a hell of a lot more sense. So it's so interesting what happens. You drop your mask. I don't like what I see under there. I keep my mask up so you never see. Or then my mask drops. And so what happens when you have two people who let down their masks, who actually see one another, not for the possibilities they represent, not for the aspirations they have, not for their aspirational self that's going to be authentic at all costs, or, but the reality, the gritty, grimy under of you. What happens when you see that? Well, then you have a new choice. And I think the stage that can emerge out of disillusionment, if it's not the end of a relationship, is communion. Like that's like union, but now it's like union plus. It's like we're truly with one another.
So moving from collusion to communion.
Right. And it often requires that middle stage of disillusionment.
Collusion, disillusionment, communion.
Yeah.
And so on some level, is it about shining a light that provides clarity as to who the individual genuinely is in the relationship and what the relationship really is also? Because there's almost this mutual collusion going on of, yeah, they're wearing the mask, but also I know they're wearing the mask and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to just ignore that fact. And I'm not going to put my mask down either. And, life is good enough until it's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to that point, we will probably keep wearing that mask as long as we can and keep the peace as long as we can until life forces us not to. We're just so addicted to comfort. We really are.
Comfort's great, man.
Yeah. Like there's a reason why we're motivated to stay in comfortable places. We spent a lot of our human history in uncomfortable places.
Yeah, I mean, you were so good at comfort that your body had to pretend that its foot was broken for you to get a little bit less comfortable, right?
Yeah.
To the extreme.
That, I mean, I think of how like feedback loops work. And this is why I love relationships, because I think in isolation, alone, we will tend towards that illusion process. We'll tend towards ignoring the problem, like personally, just as long as we can. The example I share, and I do share it a lot because it's so painfully true for me, was like the toothache that I had that I sported for like a year. And like I Tylenol'd and Advilled my way through it. I bit my lip. I ignored it because I hate dentists. If you're a dentist out there, I'm sorry. There's no such thing as a gentle dental appointment. And I just ignored my dentistry problems. And the moment of disillusion came when I'm like rolling on the ground in our living room, like with a weird towel like stuck in my mouth, and I'm moaning like an animal, like, and my wife is like, enough, you've got to go to a dentist, you've got to go. And I think that was like a real wake-up call, and turns out like I had an abscessed tooth. Like it was actually like a danger to my health, and I had been ignoring it this whole time. And so I think like one of the gifts of relationship is the disillusion. Like, is the, and so when that happens, the real possibility that we offer one another is that we can participate in one another's healing. And that was really for Christy and I, that was really what was so compelling for us. We really did look at one another and more her than me in that moment and say, actually, I have deep wounds that your woundedness totally shines a light on. Like how you are in the world is so confronting to me that I actually am having to address things that I never would have otherwise. I choose to be in this relationship as a way of growing and developing as a human being and participating in your healing too. So relationship really does become like a hospital in some ways where we participate in healing one another.
Yeah. And again, that's so frustrating to me. As like a lazy dude, one of the ways I've described my partner, Kendra, is the best thing about her is that her integrity is so high, off the charts high. And one of the worst things about her is that her integrity is so high, like off the charts high. And there's just no settling for any of my bullshit. There's no dirty dishes in the sink overnight. There's no like lying. There's no game. It's just like bing, laser beam on my that's leading me to my ultimate form of integrity. And as you say, that requires healing, feeling uncomfortable, doing the work, dropping the mask, all these annoying things to live wholeheartedly and fulfilling lives.
And what I find almost just mystically true in every coupling I experience is, we really choose the lock to our key or the key to our lock. We really do. It's like there is something in her that you are a perfect corresponding part to. Like she literally chose you, this real douchebag, right? That you're describing of lacking integrity next
Sweet loser. Yeah.
to the light of her integral self.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is she chose you for a reason. It's like it is meant to perfectly illuminate that thing that's happening in us. I find that almost with every couple that we are so deeply patternistic in our choices. We really are trying to have something healed in us.
Yeah. Complementary is a word that
that's a much better word. I like that.
So she does that for me, and the reciprocal sort of feedback is it's like, yo, chill out. Like, let's not do the dishes tonight. Like, let's go out to eat. Let's just let's relax a little. Let's laugh a little. Let's giggle some more. And let's not take it to the intensity that you're often operating at, right? And so we've kind of do this ebb and flow and meet in the middle somewhat. So I think we're very good for each other, and we're very different as well. Like if I was dating someone like me, bro, it would be a different apartment, a different level of cleanliness, the productivity, all of it, man. It would sag.
I couldn't agree more in my own life. Like I often describe that everything you think is great about me is actually Christy. Like that's the real truth. And it was funny. I was in the desert a couple of months ago with a few people, and one of the guys, I was trying to communicate the importance of Christy in my world. And he goes, "Oh no, I get it. I actually don't think there would be a Rainier Wylde if there wasn't a Christy." And I actually thought that was so beautiful. I couldn't have agreed more. Now, I think we talk a lot about things like codependent and enmeshed and all these really big words, but God, let's go back to the village. An isolated human was a dead human. Like we were so made for relationship that when we're not in relationship, our bodies get sick. We were so made for relationship that when we don't have them, we don't sleep very well. We're so made for relationship that when we don't have them, we don't eat, we get sad.
We die sooner.
We die sooner. We get sick more often. We're so made for connection. And I think the only place where we sell isolation is is in the modern Western world. I think one of the reasons why we sell independence so strongly is because we kind of have to, because there's very little like actual communion here.
Amen. I picture to your idea at the start of this conversation of a life coach or anthropologist, or a life coach, let's say from Instagram, going and visiting the hunter-gatherer tribe all those years back and saying to the gatherers, oh, you're so codependent on the hunters, and the hunters are so codependent on the gatherers. Like, no, this is nonsense. What we are is interdependent, right? As we depend upon each other at different times and different circumstances. And that is good for all. And I feel like a relationship ideally operates in a similar microcosm to that. Is that fair?
It's so fair. And I think that one of the places where we kind of lose that plot line is we think that if everyone is not all hands on deck at all times, if everyone is not giving reciprocally at every moment, then somehow the relationship is defunct. That's just not true, right? I mean, the reality is we will go again through seasons where you give more, seasons where I give more, seasons where you're an absolute taker, seasons where I'm a taker, right? And that is appropriate. What you're wanting to do is look at the long arc, right? The long arc. And hopefully if you're in a relationship with someone that within that arc, you see that actually there's been this mutuality back and forth. But honestly, like, it's a question of time. And I don't think our society really has much time tolerance. You know, I remember working with a couple who were in their 70s, and he said something I'll never forget. They had been married for 50 years. And he said, oh, the 80s. God, that was a bad decade for us. And I love that. Like, when you can start to describe your life's arc in terms of whole decades. I mean, my God.
Yeah. And imagine if you interrogated him, there's probably a bit of dishonesty even in that statement of like, really, the whole decade sucked? Like, there wasn't even one good year or one good month that you were lights out, lit up, on fire with your life. But I do love that, the long time horizon and the patience required. And the thing I've often used myself or clients is to zoom out and focus on the trajectory overall. Like, is the trajectory of your relationship, business growth positive overall? Very likely. And what you're experiencing currently is a tiny little dip in that trend line that feels like the end of the world in this cataclysmic catastrophe, but in reality is just a tiny little blip on this overarchingly positive arc.
There's a can I read something? I know that's a strange, is that okay?
Bro, there are no rules here.
Oh my God.
I approve your idea. Sure. I mean,
can we do this? Can we do this weekly? Like, we don't even have to record it.
As long as it's not like I'm going to read the whole Bible or the Declaration of Independence or something real long and
shit.
You know, I mean,
no.
Within reason.
Yeah, you should qualify before you say yes.
I got another call in a little bit, man, but we've got some time. Sure.
This is a short essay, and I was in
from you, the short essayist.
This is a short essay from a short essayist, and I was in Sayulita, Mexico, with Christy, and we were sitting at this dinner table, and I'll describe the scene, but this is what I saw in front of me, and I melted. I think sometimes the reality is, I do think that a lot of my writing, a lot of my creativity exists more within the realm of journalism than anything. I think that, like, I'm actually just trying to look at the quality of my life, the experiences of my life, and be a journalist about it. And sometimes that also turns outward and I see it in others. And sometimes that turns even larger and I see it in society. But I think, like, there is a journalistic quality to it where I'm kind of just trying to report on it, and that experience. But this is that. And I think this touches on what you're saying. I think this is really the heart of communion, I think. The saxophone is hammering Whitney's high note from I Will Always Love You. And it's not that I'm cynical. It's just that if I look up at the musicians, I might catch the eye of one of the child vendors selling me their magnets and sob stories. I look down at my food. The song mercifully ends. We've been sitting street side at the wobbly table for hours now. Moscow mules and mojitos. The surly bachelorette party behind us are pumping their fists as their favorite tunes are being played, sending their friend to war in style. There's an exhausted younger couple just ahead. At one point, he thinks she's taking a picture of him with her phone. He poses. But sitting behind her, we can see that she's actually discreetly snapping selfies of herself and sending them, pretending she's alone. The musicians sort out the next song, noting the changes, the swells, the lifts. Their sax player smirks as they strike the first note, then launch into an Italian number, full of life, joyful, amorous. And I don't know who stood first, him or her. Like an altar call, they both knew they had to move. Feet maneuvering on the cobblestone, her shoes impractical to the task of what was being asked of them. Neither noticed. Their ancient faces were beaming. This was their song. It had been since forever ago. They couldn't not dance. He closes his eyes, remembering where to step. She fumbles at first, but he catches her and she falls into the rhythm. His face regresses into a dopey grin, boyhood's love possessing the lines of time stitched on his face. She is familiar to him in a way that he didn't need to wonder about, like a fact, like his own hands. And the crowd begins to thunder its approval. Love, like the relationships that contain it, does not always last. Nor should it. Self-preservation may require boundaries. At times, there must be an end to forever. But as he holds the love of his youth, there isn't a person in that room who doesn't want to be them. That dance, the tally of late nights, worried about sick kids, lost connections, unpaid bills, broken vows, has made everything worth it. Everything is transmuted in that dance, and he only has eyes for her in that moment, and she only wants him, and nothing else exists, maybe for the first time in years. And all of it has mattered. Every heartbreaking moment has mattered.
Dang.
I think that gets to the heart of it for me, like the arc of love, you know?
That last dance.
Yeah, that last dance. I love that memory. I love, he was so in love with her. It's hard to describe, but that, you know, probably early 80-year-old face was just a boy's face adoring this woman who he's with.
Mm. And that's from your forthcoming book?
It is, yeah. Yeah, that you won't be able to read that in print till the fall, but I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah.
Sounded great, man. And
thank you.
Can you say more about the book, or are you keeping it behind closed doors for a teaser at a later date, or what's the...
You know, I think what I realized at some point in time that I wanted to do is I wanted to lure people into a relatively safe room that felt secure and stable with an economy of words, and then to pull the rug out and send them into the basement of their own heart. And so that's what I do in these short essays, these little micro stories, a few poems, some aphorisms, but mostly just narratives, just like the one I read, that detail this arc of love, beginning with endings, moving into communion, and then later collusion, and then disillusionment, and then even later into that experience of deep communion, of rediscovering one another and new beginnings. And so I love this. There's stories of young love observed on the beaches of Oaxaca. There's details of my own sordid history. There's moments like these where I'm a journalist And then there's descriptions of the things that I imagine, the things that I think. But largely, they're just these stories to try and make you feel. I really wanted to create an environment where truth was caught and not just taught. So there's not a lot of prescription in it, not a lot of self-help. But I think by the end of it, what you discover is that sense of your humanity and the goodness that's found there in love. So it's a book of love.
Mm. And is there a title?
God, no. And so I'm totally open to ideas. Maybe that's like one of the pitches on this podcast, like the winner of this gets a free ice cream.
I don't have a title for your book, but I have a title for a dental office that you said earlier that really stuck out to me, which was Gentle Dental.
It exists. I got to say, I'm not unique.
Gentle Dental is great for a dentist, I thought.
Such good marketing.
I mean, in my experience, the title will come at a very random and serendipitous manner. But for those listening, I know you have an Instagram account.
Yeah.
Are there specific other places where they can get more Rainier Wylde?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I'm really excited about is in the coming months, I'm doing a lot of classes. So I'm doing monthly workshops on writing called Writing Yourself, in which we take authors and characters and stories and we use those as springboards to really get into a place of expressing your own life and becoming the storyteller of your own lived experience. I'm so excited about that. That's a monthly offering. You can also find that on Instagram. Christy and I are launching these really like micro courses for couples called Making Love and the Making Love series, where we look at the art and science of stepping into a love that works. And so we're doing that. And so you can find all that on my Instagram. You can also subscribe to my Substack, Into the Wylde, WYLDE. And that's a great place to find me as well. I feel like I'm pumping out a lot of creativity these days and probably is that liver cleanse, that detox,
I was just going to say, man, it's got to be that lack of gout that's really energized you.
Right? Yeah. I'm so all about it.
I mean, we tease, but that is legitimately probably what's going on, man. You start to tend to your garden and it grows a lot better stuff, a lot more easily.
I think it was also the passing of my dad. I know we talked about that earlier. I think that, there's nothing to emphasize the resolute urgency of now, like someone else's passing and remembering, what am I doing on this planet? How many years do I have left? How many days? How many moments? We're all approaching that ending. Did I live it well?
Yeah. What a beautiful way to finish this conversation. Rainier, you're just such a dude. And just want to thank you for showing up so openly and so honestly with your truth, so authentically, sharing parts of your heart and your story, man. It's just been a treat to spend some time together.
It's super good to be with you. Thank you, man. And I hope I don't have a vulnerability hangover after this, like so much of authenticity.
Have some ice cream.
I'll have some ice cream. Dude, thank you.
You're welcome. Ooh-wee. Told you that was a hearty meal of a conversation, was it not? Rainier is great. He is on Instagram, as mentioned. He has many offerings, podcasts, books, etc. You can get into his world. I've included links in the show notes to those things. And finally, I just wanted to thank you for being so damn great in the way that you listen to podcasts. You're still here. You're still listening to me. And I appreciate that. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Please do share this with people that you think would benefit, people that need to hear these lessons and conversations. It helps me to spread the word, and it helps all of us to begin to have more conscious and compassionate conversations, which is the ripples that we all require to change the world. So thanks for your part in that, and I will talk to you soon.